Welcome to Bélmez Faces, the 50-year hoax that won't die. Imagine waking up one morning to find a human face staring at you from your kitchen floor. Not a photograph, not a stain. A face, formed in the concrete itself, with eyes that seem to watch you, a mouth frozen in silent anguish. You destroy it. Smash the floor with a pickaxe. Pour new concrete. The face comes back. This isn't a horror movie. This happened in 1971 in a small Spanish village called Bélmez de la Moraleda, and it didn't happen once. For over 50 years, faces have appeared, disappeared, and reappeared on the floor of one ordinary house. Dozens of them. Some say hundreds. Scientists tested the floor. Skeptics investigated. Believers flocked by the thousands. The house became a tourist attraction. The family became famous, and the faces kept coming. But here's what nobody tells you. Within 6 months of the first face appearing, a Spanish newspaper proved it was a hoax. Chemical analysis found silver nitrate, a substance used to create photographic images. The faces were painted, yet the faces continued to appear for another 33 years. Even after the hoax was exposed, even after the original homeowner died, they're still appearing today. This is the story of the Bélmez Faces. Not a ghost story, a story about what happens when an entire town agrees to believe a lie. When belief becomes business, when truth becomes irrelevant, because the real mystery isn't how the faces appeared, it's why no one wanted them to stop. The discovery, August 23, 1971, María Gómez Cámara, a housewife in her 50s, was preparing breakfast when she noticed something strange on her concrete kitchen floor, a dark stain. But not just any stain, this one had features. Eyes, a nose, a mouth twisted in what looked like agony. A human face was forming in her floor. Maria, understandably terrified, called her husband Juan Pereira and their son Miguel. The family stared at the floor. The face stared back. This wasn't pareidolia seeing faces in random patterns. This was detailed, deliberate, disturbing. Juan grabbed a pickaxe. They destroyed the section of floor where the face had appeared. They poured new concrete. Problem solved. 1 week later, the face was back, in the exact same spot. The family panicked. Word spread through Bélmez, a village of barely 2,000 people. Neighbors came to see. The local priest was consulted. Rumors flew. The house was cursed, possessed, built on unholy ground. The mayor of Bélmez, recognizing either a genuine mystery or a golden opportunity, intervened. He forbade the family from destroying the face again. Instead, he had the concrete section cut out and sent for analysis. Then he did something interesting. He opened the house to visitors. By Easter 1972, just 7 months after the first face appeared, hundreds of people were lining up to see Maria's kitchen floor. The house had a new name, La Casa de las Caras, the House of the Faces. The phenomenon spreads. The first face was just the beginning. Over the following months and years, more faces appeared. Some emerged slowly over days. Others formed in hours, with witnesses claiming to watch them materialize like developing photographs. The faces weren't identical. Some appeared male, others female. Some looked young, others ancient. They varied in size, detail, and expression. One face looked peaceful, almost serene. Another seemed to scream silently. A child's face appeared, then faded. One resembled Maria herself. The faces didn't just appear, they changed. Witnesses reported that certain faces would shift expression over time. A neutral face would develop a frown. Eyes would seem to open wider. Mouths would appear to move, and they wouldn't stay put. A face would appear in one corner of the kitchen, fade over weeks, then reappear across the room. Dozens of faces emerged, overlapped, disappeared. Some lasted years, others vanished in days. By the mid-Joshua-s, Bélmez had become an international sensation. Perhaps psychologists arrived from Germany, France, and beyond. Film crews documented the faces. Tourists from across Europe made pilgrimages to this remote Andalusian village. The Pereira family was interviewed by newspapers and television. The cemetery connection, then came the discovery that seemed to confirm the paranormal explanation. In 1972, investigators decided to excavate beneath the kitchen floor. At approximately 2.8 meters deep, they found human remains, partial skeletons, bones without skulls. The remains were old, estimated to date from the 13th century. The theory solidified. The house was built over a medieval cemetery. The faces were the dead, trying to communicate. Spirits trapped beneath concrete, using the only medium available to make their presence known. Local legends supported this. Some claimed the site had been a Muslim cemetery during the Moorish period. Others said it was a Christian burial ground. A few whispered about witch burnings, executed criminals, victims of plague. The excavated remains were removed and reburied elsewhere. For a brief period, the faces stopped appearing. Then they came back, more detailed, more frequent, as if the disturbance had angered whatever force was creating them. María Gómez Cámara lived with the faces for 33 years. They appeared in her kitchen, her hallway, other rooms. She became a local celebrity, a reluctant custodian of the unexplained. She gave interviews, allowed researchers into her home, watched as strangers knelt on her floor, studying faces that she had to live with every day. She died in 2004 at age 85. One of the faces, the one that resembled Hera, fitted shortly after her death. But the faces didn't stop. The evidence against here's what the believers rarely mention. The Bélmez Faces were exposed as a hoax almost immediately. In February 1972, just 6 months after the first face appeared, the Spanish newspaper Pueblo published chemical analysis of the floor. The results were clear. The faces contained silver nitrate and silver chloride. These aren't supernatural substances. They're chemicals used in photography and painting. Silver nitrate oxidizes when exposed to light, creating dark images on surfaces. It's how photographic film works. It's also how you could fake faces on a concrete floor. The hoax should have ended there, but it didn't, because by 1972, Bélmez had an economy built on the faces. The house was a tourist attraction. Local businesses thrived on visitors. The family was earning money from entrance fees and interviews. The faces continued to appear for 32 more years. In 2004, the newspaper El Mundo published another Exposé, New Bélmez Faces, faked by Ghostbusters and municipal government. The investigation revealed that recent faces were being created with an even simpler method: water and oil paint. The article named names. Pedro Amaras, a paranormal investigator who claimed to study the faces, was caught creating new ones. Maria's younger relatives were implicated in touching up fading faces to keep them visible for tourists. The municipal government was accused of complicity, protecting a hoax because the town's economy depended on it. In 2007, journalist Javier Cabanilles published the book Las Caras de Bélmez, a pun meaning both. The Faces of Bélmez and the Scoundrels of Bélmez. The book identified Maria's son Diego Pereira as the likely original artist. Why the hoax worked: the Bélmez Faces succeeded not despite being exposed, but because being exposed didn't matter. Consider the economics. Bélmez de la Moraleda was a dying village. Agricultural decline was emptying rural Spain. Young people left for cities. Businesses closed. Then, suddenly, one house had ghosts. Tourists arrived. Hotels filled. Restaurants opened. The local economy revived. Who benefits from proving it's fake? No one. Who suffers if the mystery dies? Everyone. The mayor didn't want it debunked. The family didn't want it debunked. Local businesses didn't want it debunked. Even the tourists didn't want it debunked. They'd traveled to see a mystery, not a con job. So the faces continued. When chemical analysis proved forgery, believers dismissed it as incomplete testing. When investigators caught people painting new faces, believers claimed those were just copycat hoaxes. The original faces were still real. This is how shared delusions work. When everyone has a reason to believe, evidence becomes irrelevant. The psychology of belief. The Bélmez Faces reveal something darker than ghosts. Our willingness to choose comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. Humans are pattern recognition machines. We see faces in clouds, in wood grain, in burnt toast. This is Pareidalia's survival mechanism that helped our ancestors spot predators in shadows. But it also makes us susceptible to seeing meaning where none exists. Add financial incentive, add community pressure, add the desire for significance, and you get Bélmez, a village that collectively decided reality was negotiable. Scientists couldn't replicate the effect under controlled conditions. No one ever filmed a face forming without human intervention. Tests consistently found chemical residues associated with painting, but belief persisted because belief was profitable. Parapsychologist Hans Bender studied the case but published almost nothing. German Diargo Mosa investigated for 2 years and published nothing. The silence is telling. When serious researchers find nothing paranormal, they quietly move on. Believers interpret the silence as mystery. The faces today. The house still stands at Cayo Real 5, Bélmez de la Moraleda. You can visit. Some of the original faces remain, faded but visible. Locals will tell you new ones still appear. After Maria's death, several new faces emerged. Investigators immediately identified them as crude forgeries, someone trying to keep the legend alive. But does it matter? Tourists still come. The house is still a curiosity. The Bélmez Faces prove a disturbing truth. In the marketplace of ideas, mystery sells better than truth. A haunted house brings tourists. A revealed hoax brings embarrassment. So the faces persist. Not because spirits are real, but because belief is profitable. Not because the dead are speaking, but because the living are listening for what they want to hear. Conclusion: the Bélmez Faces aren't a paranormal mystery. They're a sociological one. They're proof that when an entire community benefits from a lie, the lie becomes truth by consensus. When the economy depends on ghosts, ghosts will be provided. When people want to believe, evidence against becomes evidence of a cover-up. María Gómez Cámara died in 2004. The faces she lived with for 33 years may have been painted by her family for profit. Or maybe she believed they were real. Sometimes the best con artists convince themselves first. The real haunting of Bélmez isn't the faces. It's how easily we abandon truth when fantasy is more profitable. How quickly we collectively agree to believe what benefits us. How willingly we trade reality for mystery. The faces will probably continue appearing. Because as long as people will pay to see them, someone will ensure they're there to be seen. The ghosts of Bélmez aren't medieval corpses, they're the ghosts of critical thinking, sacrificed on the altar of tourism revenue. In the end, the Bélmez Faces teach us something more unsettling than any ghost story. We don't need the supernatural to be haunted. We haunt ourselves with the lies we refuse to question. The faces aren't the mystery. We are